Welcome everyone. Today I'd like to discuss why organizational configurations vary widely and how they are related to historical antecedents, the nature of work, and external environmental pressures. In order to accomplish this, I'll provide a brief review of persisting organizational dilemmas before discussing structural forms and functions and the forces that influence restructuring. Resolving organizational dilemmas depend on each organization's situation and is an ongoing task of management that includes differentiation versus integration, gaps versus overlaps, underuse versus overload, the lack of clarity versus the lack of creativity, excessive autonomy versus excessive interdependence, too loose versus too tight, diffuse authority versus centralization, goal-less versus goal-bound, and responsive and unresponsive circumstances. Differentiation versus integration. This is the classic structural tension between the need to distribute and coordinate work. Lawrence and Lorsch observed that organizations mirror their environments and developed organizational structures that were suitable. For example, organizations in stable environments adopted simple structures, and those in unstable environments developed complex structures. Different divisions within the same organization develop different structures. In other words, manufacturing divisions are bureaucratic, while the research and development divisions need greater flexibility. Universities are both highly centralized bureaucratic organizations and decentralized to allow for academic governance. Gaps versus overlaps. Managers are responsible for developing effective structures in which key responsibilities are assigned to specific individuals, groups, or offices. If this does not occur, tasks will not be carried out, gaps will appear, and performance will suffer. An example of a gap may include a school that lacks effective handling of school discipline. Disruptions will divert attention away from instruction, and test scores will decline. Overlap refers to wasted effort and conflict in how work is carried out. In other words, communicating only through formal channels when a quick telephone call will accomplish the task more expeditiously. Underuse versus overload. Some workers have little to do while others are overwhelmed. This imbalance can impact an organization's morale and effectiveness. One solution is to cross-train staff to enable more hands-on when work picks up in a given area. This strategy of cross-training has enhanced the effectiveness of combat platoons in the field. Lack of clarity versus lack of creativity. A common problem in organizations is that many people do not know what they're supposed to do. As a consequence, they shape their role to fit their personal needs rather than accomplish organizational goals. On the other hand, too much clarity may introduce rigidity, and when this occurs, people will conform to bureaucratic roles, which in turn undermines creativity and productivity. Excessive autonomy versus excessive interdependence. In some organizations, autonomy and loose coupling causes people to feel isolated and unsupported. For example, teacher isolation. On the other hand, tightly coupled organizations require an undue amount of supervision and coordination, and too much time is spent in meetings. This is referred to as excessive interdependence. Too loose versus too tight. Carl Weick introduced the notion of loose-tight coupling in organizations. Having an organization that is too loose refers to the fact that no one knows what to do and people do their own thing. Being too tight refers to excessive vertical rigidity or bureaucracy that reduces creativity and productivity. Achieving a balance between vertical and lateral coordination is needed. In other words, creating a system of rules and coordination that holds an organization together without holding it back. Diffuse authority versus over-centralization. In diffuse organizations, no one knows who has the authority over what. That creates confusion and conflict. In centralized bureaucratic organizations that have multiple layers of middle management, information is distorted as it moves upward, and decisions that flow down to the operational levels are slow and inaccurate. Goal-less versus goal-bound. Although few people can articulate their organization's real goals, others are so specific that they are goal-bound and are unable to use their discretion and adapt to change. Argyris and Shun distinguish between espoused theories and theories in use. Espoused theories are what organizations or people say they do. Theories in use are what they actually do. Theories in use reflect organizational assumptions and understandings that are shared among members and are reflected in individual and organizational actions. Irresponsible versus unresponsive. When people abdicate their responsibilities, performance suffers, like when doing favors for people by bending the rules. However, when people rigidly adhere to rules or a job description, it can also reduce productivity. Lipsky referred to these people as street-level bureaucrats. This image alienated the public and perpetuates the image of bureaucratic rigidity and red tape. When labor unions want to slow productivity, they work to rule. In other words, they know that by following all the written rules, you can bring an organization to a standstill. Reasonable people who use their discretion make the organization work. Structural designs rarely begin from scratch. Managers tend to search for options among existing organizations, accumulated wisdom, and experiences of others. When viewing design options, they may begin with a broad organizing set of principles that may help them craft a blueprint for expectations and exchanges among internal and external players. Although design options are almost infinite, the phrase "form follows function," coined by the architect Frank Lloyd Wright, underscores the importance of creating an organizational design that fits its purpose and its environment. Let's briefly look at what Henry Mintzberg and Sally Helgeson's conceptions of structural possibilities look like. Here is Henry Mintzberg's basic framework for understanding structural configurations. He went beyond archaic two-dimensional staff line charts and replaced them with new structural images that group various functions and shows their size and importance to different missions and external challenges. It provides a template that helps managers assess their needs before they structure or restructure their organization. Mintzberg's fives include strategic apex, middle management, the operating core, technostructure, and support staff. Because organizations are involved in different types of work, encounter different types of external environmental circumstances, they evolve different organizational forms. Mintzberg describes 5 different organizational forms, including simple structures, machine bureaucracy, professional bureaucracy, the divisional form, and adhocracy. Each form has its own unique strengths and problems. Let's look at simple structures. Most businesses begin with simple structures that are often referred to as mom-and-pop operations because they have only 2 levels, the strategic apex and the operating core. Coordination is accomplished through direct supervision and oversight. This is how Thomas Edison started GE and Steve Jobs created Apple. Its virtues include flexibility and adaptability needed by startup organizations. However, its liabilities include dependency on one person who can initiate or block change, punish and reward, and place undue emphasis on short-term goals and problems. Bowman and Deal use McDonald's as an example of a machine bureaucracy because decisions are made at their strategic apex. Day-to-day operations are controlled by local managers through standardized procedures. There are many layers of support staff and technocrats between the apex and operations. The virtues of a machine bureaucracy include routine efficiency and effectiveness, Liabilities include repetitive and standardized work is boring, and motivating people at the operational core is a problem. In addition, there's a tension between local managers who want to adapt to local circumstances and executives who want uniformity. Some innovation has been allowed. Professional bureaucracy. Universities are a good example of professional bureaucracies. There are a few levels between the apex, the president, and the operating core, the faculty. It is a decentralized structure, uses professional indoctrination, including culture, norms, values, and beliefs, as a means of control. Support staff serve professionals who carry out the primary responsibility of teaching, research, and service, and expertise insulates professionals from interference. The professional bureaucratic structure has several problems, including: 1. It's a bifurcated system. Bureaucratic hierarchical structures and decentralized academic governance structures make system changes slow and difficult. And 2. Standardization of teaching and content conflicts with academic freedom, conflicts with clients' needs, and may jeopardize accreditation. Its strengths include the ability of faculty to rapidly infuse new knowledge into courses to match advances in disciplines and fields of study and conduct research. The divisional form. Multi-campus universities, community colleges, and hospitals are examples of divisional forms of organizations. They respond to their own market areas and, as functional units, have considerable autonomy to act, but are expected to deliver the results. The virtues of a divisional form include economics of scale and responsiveness to local needs without requiring the entire organization to change. Problems include tensions between the organization, tight control, and divisional form needing autonomy. Divisions lose touch with headquarters, or where the rubber meets the air, which requires a reliable vertical information system. Adhocracy. Adhocracies are loose, self-renewing, flexible, and organic forms of organizations that exist at administrative and operational levels and are tied together with lateral forms of communication. They tend to emerge in turbulent environments that change rapidly and in which organizations must respond quickly to exploit benefits. Examples include advertising agencies, think tanks, and high-tech equipment companies. Authority structures are ambiguous, objectives are unclear, and responsibility may be contradictory. Virtues include attracting creative people and fostering learning. Problems include unsuitability for conducting routine work. They require extensive staff training, creates chaos, duplication, inefficiency, and makes communication difficult. Now let's look at Helgeson's web of inclusion. Mintzberg's 5-sector imagery of organizational structures conveys a traditional top-down approach. Helgeson argues that the notion of hierarchy is male-oriented and differs from those of female executives who place an emphasis on nurturing good lateral relationships rather than genuflecting to those who hold hierarchical rank. Women leaders are at the center rather than at the top, and lines of communication are multifaceted, open, and diffuse. Emphasis is placed on accessibility and equality, and they strive to be inclusive in their decision-making processes. The web of inclusion creates a more circular, organic structure that builds from the center out, through a network of interconnections rather than from top down, as the case in male-dominated hierarchical organizations. Although this model clearly has important strengths, Helgeson notes that weakness at the center or at the periphery of the natural web may undermine how it functions. For example, eBay started as a web, but as it grew, CEO Meg Whitman was hired to provide more structure and discipline to keep it going. There are several generic issues in restructuring. At some point, internal and external changes will force organizations to restructure. Consequently, managers and leaders will be compelled to find a structure that fits its changing external environmental demands, technology, and natural tensions among various organizational components. Organizations face different circumstances, hence one size does not fit all. There are several generic issues that must be addressed in restructuring. First, each component exerts distinct pressures. Second, the strategic apex will push for more alignment and centralization. Third, middle managers will try to protect their autonomy and want enough room to run their own unit. Fourth, the technostructure will push for standardization and believes in measurement and monitoring. And fifth, the support staff prefers less hierarchy and more collaboration. The most important question facing managers and leaders is why restructure? Restructuring takes time and consumes an enormous amount of resources with little guarantee that it'll be successful. Managers only engage in restructuring when they are compelled to respond to changes that either threaten their survival or present opportunities to be more successful. Pressures for restructuring often occur when the environment shifts, technology changes, organizations grow, leadership changes, and when companies are troubled, including impulsive firms. For example, an entrepreneurial firm that needs more structure to continue, stagnant bureaucracies, old traditional organizations that need to be revitalized to survive, and headless giants, where administrative core is weak, power has shifted to divisions which compete with one another, and the organization becomes dysfunctional. We have learned lessons from successful structural change. Case studies of Citibank's back room, Kodak's black and white division, and Beth Israel Hospital illustrates four basic principles of successful structural change. First, new organization goals and strategies are defined. Second, they carefully studied existing organizational structures to get a good picture of current roles, relationships, and processes before proposing any changes. Third, they designed the new structure in response to changes in goals, technology, and environment. And fourth, they experimented as they implemented changes, retaining things that worked, modified some, or discarded others that didn't. In conclusion, managers and leaders engage in restructuring to realign organizational tasks with its external environment, while balancing existing internal roles, relationships, and processes. Successful restructuring efforts are based on a careful analysis of change forces, current circumstances, and planning to avoid resistance, confusion, and performance gap to achieve long-term success. The attached scenario, History in Organizations, Why We Do Things the Way We Do, may give some insight into the way we do things in organizations and how that baggage may influence restructuring. Aside from the historical baggage that your organization carries that may inhibit or shape design options, I'd like you to think about other forces that are presently driving change.